Hello, Will. You're the man of big dreams. That's what she said, and of course she's right. And your next big dream, as I understand it, is a real center for literature, a literary center. And you don't dream small dreams. I mean, you want a performing space. You want residency spaces for writers to live in and studios for them to work in. You want office space for nonprofits and WeWork spaces. What do you have in mind? I've sort of added up about 10,000 square feet in my mind, maybe 20,000. What are you going for?
I was inspired to start Deep Vellum when I moved to Dallas in no small part because the motto of Dallas is big things happen here. And you can really do something with that mentality. And as I've started Deep Vellum and traveled around the world and collaborated with organizations in cities far and wide, I've seen this model that you just described exist in other cities and thrive in other cities. And it makes me come home to Dallas and wonder why we don't have a center for the literary arts the way that we have a wonderful performing arts center, a wonderful theater center, wonderful museums, galleries. We want to create a permanent home for the literary arts, to give people off the street, to give every member of the community a place to gather around the joy of storytelling. And I think that the idea of space, Dallas is a real estate town as well. And we look forward to collaborating to find the right space, but also to really working and collaborating with as many groups and individuals as we can to make this thing happen, because it can't exist alone. It really is going to be the power of what we call literary Dallas coming together to make something, hopefully a profound change that will exist long past my time on this mortal coil.
Well, I know you went to Rochester and studied business for a while, and it sounds to me as if you have a capital campaign in mind. Is that right?
Yeah, I think this is the beginning of a capital campaign. It's a strange time to think big, but there's no time like crisis to start trying to, once you've figured out you can tread water, how do you get past this crisis, and how do you avoid future crises, and how do you build and learn from these experiences? You can learn from hard times and set yourself up for the future. And that's our plan for this year, is the fact that we feel like the city and Deep Vellum are primed to sort of lead the way and help make this happen. And eternally grateful for the experience I learned as a sort of apprenticeship under Chad Post at the University of Rochester with Open Letter Books. He guided my way to make me feel like I could start a publishing house. He really taught me what it takes to lead, to publish diverse books, and to make an impact. And that really has inspired me a lot. And then I sort of adapted that model to what Dallas has and what it hasn't had before.
Well, you want Dallas to be truly a literary center in the country in the way that I've heard you say Seattle is a literary center, Iowa City is a literary center. Now, Iowa City, I'm guessing, is near the Iowa Writers Workshop. I may be wrong. What is it about Seattle? What's going on there that would make you call it literary?
That's a great question. I will say in Iowa City, the Iowa Writers Program is sort of like the gold standard of American creative writing programs, but it really has fostered an entire community and an entire economy for literature in the city. And of course, they have a wonderful independent bookstore called Prairie Lights that helps provide the community space. So it's not just happening on campus, it's happening in Iowa City as well. That's really important for us, to be able to bridge the academy with the community, with the literary world, and with your average reader in a way that we can serve as a go-between to foster the dialogue that it takes. Seattle was named a World City of Literature by the United Nations cultural arm called UNESCO. And, they have some of the most extraordinary independent bookstores in the country up there. Our personal home away from home is called Elliott Bay. We have a relationship with a longtime bookseller there named Rick Simonson. But Elliott Bay excels, for example, in not just doing events at a bookstore, not just selling books, but in taking literary events to museums throughout the community. It's a lot like what the Dallas Museum of Art and their Arts and Letters Live series has pioneered here. And when that came to Dallas, that transformed the way that literature was performed in the city, like produced in the city. And they can't do it alone. And so we hope to be able to join up with them and collaborate and continue to find ways to reach readers. And of course, it goes without saying that the world's biggest bookseller is also headquartered in Seattle, and they have certainly transformed that city greatly, and the world of literature greatly. And it is in no small part Amazon's influence on the world. The way that we're able to reach readers is extraordinary, though it's interesting to partner with Amazon to get books to readers, as well as with independent booksellers who are really the lifeblood of what we do, and provide a wonderful way to introduce smaller independent publishers like us to readers all around the world, in Iowa City and Seattle and in Dallas and in London and everywhere in between.
Of course, you want to get books to readers, and you have a bookstore yourself. It's online, it's in bricks and mortar. It's a for-profit bookstore. The question is, do you make any profit there?
Well, on any given day, that's an up and down scenario. It's been a very rough year for brick and mortar retail, as we all know. But this bookstore actually was sort of my pioneering model for what I thought a community center could be. Right? It's technically a for-profit, but it operates as Deep Vellum Publishing's public face. This is a way to walk in off the street and to see our books on shelves, and not just our books, but really the books of our peers, because we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist as part of a thriving community of independent publishers, and we wanted to find a way to give space to those independent publishers in Dallas as well. The books that you might not find on the tables of larger bookstores, or on the when you're on the front page of Amazon or getting newsletters from Reese Witherspoon's book club. What are the books that are being left out of the conversation but are so extraordinary that they could change the world? And that's the publishers that inspired me to start all of this. I look at Milkweed Editions in Minneapolis, for example, $2 Radio in Columbus, Ohio. These are just a couple of other publishers that have recently started bookstores as well. It's a really intriguing way to get your work into your community, as well as support the work of the community that you're a part of. And that's what it's about. So we've hosted events in the store that are very similar to what we want to do in the Literary Arts Center. Not just selling books, but hosting spaces for spoken word poetry, for touring authors, for letter writing campaigns to members of Congress. We've done a little bit of everything here. And that has really given me a good sense of where we can go with a proper literary center, with the right resources and the right space, because the space is very, very small. And I think that we've outgrown this beautiful space here in Deep Vellum, but we've loved every second of being a member of this community that inspired the name of the company.
Yes, well, I know that you love Russian culture. You majored in Russian culture at Emory as an undergraduate, and also at Duke as a graduate student. You fell in love with Russia, and I think that probably extends maybe to music, but certainly to art, because I've noticed that your graphics tonight are right out of the Russian avant-garde, Malevich and Supremacism. You must have done that by design.
Indeed. That's a good chance to shout out Mark Perkins of Sullivan Perkins, who helped make that design. And then the front cover designs of a lot of our early books were inspired indeed by the Russian avant-garde, and those designs were provided by Anna Zelik, who is an invaluable member of the Deep Vellum family. And actually the Deep Vellum logo too, which is a special thing. It's this like little, it almost looks like a V or an open book or a shuttlecock. Mm-hmm. The two pieces of art that I sent to, actually 3 pieces of art I sent to the designer to make that logo was pictures of Fair Park with the Texas Art Deco, as well as a modern glass cube of a building at Duke that has Gothic flying buttresses, and then also the Russian avant-garde, like it's in a whole book of Russian avant-garde. And this logo came up, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's everything all at once. It was perfect.
Yeah, it seems to me that wonderful writing often comes out of distressed times and distressed places. I think about the American South in the first half of the 20th century, with the terrible reckoning that was going on with everything David Marquis was just talking about. I think that when migrants came to this country from India, they did some marvelous writing. And of course, Russia is bound to be crying out for expression now. I mean, the Navalny story is begging to be told. I think it's begging for opera. But I'm wondering, are you in touch with writers in Russia now who are turning out work that is expressing the anguish of that country now and the anguish of that people?
Yeah, I think you actually just expressed something really interesting about what we call literature, right? That's not an elitist term. Literature is a form of storytelling that makes it to the printed page, and publishing is a way to make that work public to the world. And this idea of hard times being a time of opportunity is something we've already touched on. And you're absolutely right that, like, when we started publishing translated literature, a lot of great books that we did are about conflict, either interpersonal conflict, or intergenerational conflict, international conflict. And then when we started publishing American authors alongside those translated books, it was not intentional, but a lot of the first books we signed, I think like 6 of our first 7, are writers writing in diaspora communities, members whose parents or themselves were born in other countries who now write in English and who are as American as you and me. People, I mean, they're just extraordinary American authors, but who have a something blank American at the beginning. That's a really interesting. That's not what I expected, but it would make sense given the style of literature we're talking about. And what you just mentioned about Russia in particular, I actually had a Zoom call this morning with a new writer we had just signed named Alla Gorbunova, who is from St. Petersburg. And she just wrote an amazing novel in stories called It's the End of the World, My Love. And it is a book that is ostensibly about growing up in Russia in the 90s, which when you talk about a really hard time, Russia in the 90s, in the post-Soviet era, was extraordinarily difficult life. But it's also effused with magic and the power of this book. I had 5 friends in Russia text me when they bought the book being like, this is the best book of the year. And just 3 nights ago, she won the Novel of the Year prize from one of the biggest literary prizes in Russia. She's a very young author. It's only her 2nd book. And through works like this act of friction, even if she's talking about the 90s, the way that you read it today makes it current. Literature for writers like Alla, for writers like Alisa Ganeva, whom we published from Russia, or Mikhail Shishkin, these are writers who are very politically and socially engaged, and they use literature as a way to sort of process the political and the social moment, this moment in history, and all writers do. If you choose to write a biography of Caesar right now in American history, you are writing it through the lens of where we are as a people. And when it is published in 2 years, it is going to be read through the lens of where we are as a people. And that's why literature is really important to have available for all time, to keep books in print so that we are able to visit and revisit works, because they change. They change context, they change importance, they change meaning through time. There's very famous stories of this. Of course, Kafka and Moby Dick were not read in their lifetime. So many writers have died penniless and then go on to great fame and acclaim decades after their death. And we want to find as many writers as we can living now and works that are out of print to raise them up and to make sure that they're in print so that we can study them throughout time and throughout history.
Well, Will, I can't wait. I can't wait to come shopping at your bookstore. I can't wait to come to the center. So keep on going, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks, everyone, for watching tonight. This is an honor.